I'm Marten Rabarts, Director of New Zealand International Film Festival, Whānau Mārama. Really, really pleased to be talking to Oualid Mouaness, the director of 1982, a beautiful film set in Lebanon in 1982, a film that I saw elements of, very strong elements of, as a work in progress at a film festival in Egypt a couple of years ago, and was really, really pleased to be able to see the completed film and invite it to the festival. Let's meet Oualid.
It is such a pleasure to be participating in the festival. I only wish I could be in New Zealand. I've always wanted to go. Yes.
We wish you could be here. We wish you could be here too.
Yeah.
Where are you right now? You're in Los Angeles, I understand.
I am in Los Angeles
okay.
Right now, yeah.
But your film is set in Beirut, in Lebanon, your hometown. You're a long way from home, and at the moment, with the way things are in Beirut, it's heartbreaking to see what is unfolding there at the moment. So you're safe in LA. Is everyone you know and love okay in Beirut?
Yeah, everybody's okay. The family's great. My friends are okay. I mean, we're all very frustrated. To be quite honest, I'm very frustrated being this far away, given what's going on right now. And what's going on is like so momentous. And it is tough. I wish I got stuck there, honestly.
Interesting, yeah. I can
Instead
imagine.
of Los Angeles, yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, your film, documents a moment in time that was of huge national and international importance, and you tell it through the microcosm of young characters who don't have anything close to a full understanding of what's unfolding. You'd sort of watch 1982 and hope things had settled down in Lebanon, but in fact they've just got ever more complicated. Tell me why you wanted to reflect on that time so long ago, aside from it, I understand, being a recall, a memory recall of your own. Why focus your film on that moment?
Really humanity. To be quite honest, there's something that's, there's moments in life that just impact you and stay with you, and you remember them with such vivid detail. And this was one of the times in my life where I first experienced war. But at the same time, what was very important for me, having traveled into the world and all of that, I kind of wanted to present a narrative where I show Lebanese people for who they are, for what they are, with their struggles, with their reality, with their humanity, even in the most dire of circumstances. And I felt there was a universality to this. And I could place this film in I could place this film in 2006 when another invasion happened, or I could place it now when but my objective is really the humanity of it, while at the same time taking the opportunity to present a moment in time that we hope never repeats itself. I mean, for me, the overarching message of the film is to show it with such intensity, to show the disruption of normal life. As a matter of fact, the zest and the will for normal life and the need for normal life, the aspiration for normal life in Lebanon, then and now, and how what we see on the news are not the people who are trying to get on with their lives and have a good life. What we see on the news is always the disruption and the destruction. And in this case, what I wanted to show is the absolute normalcy that we were always trying to live in the most dire circumstances.
That was being torn apart from both sides,
Exactly.
and also from
Exactly.
within. I mean, it's the
Exactly.
intimacy of your story told not just both from the child love story
Yeah.
as your main characters, you know,
Yeah.
trying to just get through this simple act to tell this girl he loves her, but also in the adult characters who are sort of,
Right.
again, torn apart by the powers that struggles and plays that are going on behind them. When you were that little kid, can I just say,
Yeah. Yeah.
how aware were you that, you know, through conversations with adults, overhearing them, because that's an element of the film, these snippets of overheard conversation that don't necessarily always tie together. But we as a viewer are allowed to tie them together in a way that the kids aren't. How aware were you at the time that your country was descending into war?
I wasn't actually. I would. I tried to represent this and the conversations in the adults and the news the way we hear them when we don't really understand the context. But also, I happened to be on the side of the fence that wasn't directly in the line of fire. But nonetheless, the political differences were very palpable at every dinner table with the family, at every dinner, you know. So though I didn't really understand the details of it, and I came to understand it as an adult, the you know, that was, those differences were palpable. There was the left and the right, and there was the one who thought the other one was wrong, and I kind of wanted to represent that in a way, while at the same time I kind of draw a parallel from the purity and the purity and the honesty of emotions in children, in that they're really pretty direct, and they speak their mind and they feel their mind, whereas adults talk in suppressed words. Rarely do they say what they mean, and everything is very subtextual. This was very important because I tried to reflect as much as possible the way Lebanese people really, really, really communicated. So, yeah.
I think that those layers of communication and masking, like hiding behind things that are, or things that remain unsaid behind masks of what is able to be said, plays out incredibly well in the film, because we're also left a little mystified about what this hell is this all about. Even if you have some knowledge of the different factions in Beirut at that time, historically speaking, that seems to me almost an intention that we are as puzzled that how can this be happening, in a way, as much as the children are, or as much as the adults who are equally like left, you know, they're just going like, how can this be happening to our society? You put us in the shoes of the experience of the time, I think, is what I'm saying.
I mean, that was my intention, and one of the things that I always think when you're writing a film such as 1982, and when you're thinking, like, the most important thing is the emotional truth of matters. And really, I just went for emotional truths in both the adults and the kids, because it's not about, really, I'm not setting out to tell a history of what happened. That would be a different movie. I set out to tell the history, to tell a narrative about the impact of that moment in time on these humans who, in the adult world, are completely confused, are incapable of communicating with each other clearly ever, and it's broken. Whereas with kids, those impacts, they have not been contaminated by the world, and this leads to sort of also the purity of every emotion in the kids, as well as the purity of the ending, in my opinion. So in the adult world, there's a lot of confusion. There's and even in the radio broadcasts, there's snippets of information, but you're not really clear as to which side is which. And
absolutely,
which side...
it's like a soup of information that you're sort of trying to make your way through.
Yeah, and that was for me intentional, because it is a soup of information, because to this day, as we know, media and radios and everything, rarely anybody ever says anything without a skew of sorts.
Right.
And that was happening then.
Yeah.
And the struggle that they have as a couple, also the adults, it's Jasmine and Joseph's character, uh, is that exactly. It's like what is clear. Like they both have a point of view, and they both can sit there and argue that they're right, and they can both convince you. But then again, what is the moral of the story? Because if you're either here or here, you're only gonna fight all the time. So how do you-
I really like how those political positions are hidden inside their personal arguments.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
they're just a couple kind of at each
yeah,
other,
yeah,
and you're being but you are being brought to understand what's going on in the political backdrop. So
yeah.
it's very cleverly done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Speaking of characters, amazing cast. The
Thank you.
children are spectacular. Nadine Labaki is luminous as always.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the casting.
Well, there's several parts to it because I went about the adults very differently than I went about the
Sure.
kids. With the kids, I've been working with, during the writing process, I was researching a lot and I would go spend time in schools. I had a friend of mine who does a lot of drama work with kids. So every year in March and April, I would go to Lebanon for the years before we shot the film. And I would go to his workshops, work with the students, workshop some of the scenes, though they didn't know what it was, we'd do that. And then I realized something. I realized that kids actually surprise you and give you more than you can ever imagine when you don't lock them into a
Right.
text. So, and one of the things that I realized is they grow up very fast. So when you cast,
Yeah.
you need to shoot. You can't wait. I mean, even by the end of by the end of the shoot, they were starting to grow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it was very funny, but. I got when we knew we had a sense we were going to shoot. Had a sense we were going to film. I went to Lebanon before we even greenlit the shoot. I kind of triggered the casting from a grant I got from the Sundance Institute, and then once that got going, once I felt we had an options rather for the kids, we decided to proceed. My process was cast a very wide net, different schools, different religions, different walks of life. We saw about 700 kids. From the 700, whittled down to about 200 who actually came in for a secondary audition. From that down to 30, and that 30 for me was the classroom. And from within this classroom, I was gonna find out who is gonna play who. And there were like a couple of Wissams, there were a couple of Majids, there were 3 Joannas, 3 Abirs, with the idea that whoever's in the classroom and did not make
And hasn't grown a moustache yet.
and hasn't and did not really make did not like kind of stand out above the rest, they will still be a part of the classroom.
Absolutely, that's great. So
And
you
then they
cast a
became friends.
class. Yeah, that's great.
I cast the class, and then they became really good friends. The process was very organic. About 3 weeks in like they kind of knew who was. Then I assigned the roles, and then in that process, the rehearsal process was very fantastic because it was not just about coming and reading scripts. I mean, we saw movies together, we discussed characters, we saw The Goonies, we saw My Life as a Zucchini. We would talk about emotional state, and all these kids were just like, I would create these screenings, and then we'd go out to have dinner together, and then they'd have friends. It was more like activities, and there was a camera always running whenever we were doing an actual workshop, so they were used to it. And then did
you take Nadine to see The Goonies as well?
No, Nadine was in like deep in the edit of her movie. Capernaum.
Yeah.
And it was very funny because I thought she was not. I mean, I'd spoken to her about the film in late 2013 when I was still writing, and she loved it then. And she's like, "Yeah, but then you never know how things transpire." And then when this greenlit, I'm like, "Nadine, do you want to do it?" She's like, "Yeah, I want to do it." And then she's like, "What are your dates?" And I told her my dates. My dates happened to be exactly at the time she was taking a vacation from editing.
Which is great for you, not great for her vacation.
Yeah, I know. It was very funny, and it was like, but she was just fantastic, and then we did a few sessions before, she and I, And then we didn't tell the kids it was Nadine. And then
Okay.
when she showed up in the classroom, everybody was like,
Oh my God. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But the kids played up to her really, and what was amazing is like mostly also Majid's response to Nadine, and like that scene when she does it in her class and his interaction with her. All of that was Majid improving.
Wow.
Yeah, Majid was just like an unbelievable improviser. Wissam
Wow.
was a kid of ideas, and he was very introverted.
Mm.
Majid is like improving. And then what was really great is they got to a point where they were so comfortable with the story that they knew where they were when I was shooting. I hardly had to do more than 2 takes
Wow.
with the kid.
Wow. That's great.
So, even for example, the scene with Abir when she's in Layla's office, we filmed that scene. She goes up and she talks to Miss Layla. She does her performance. I was sitting there and I was just like, I got emotional.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. And I look at my script supervisor and like, I think we have it. So let's do a second one just for safety.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, it was a one taker and she got it and she hit it on the head.
Wow.
And that's what we ended up using in the edit. And also it was her improv and she took her moments. I mean, what was really fascinating about these kids is because the process was very organic for them and I gave them freedom to bring something to the table, they felt that the story was theirs.
Okay.
And they're still friends to this day, all of them.
Oh,
actually.
wow.
It's
Wow,
really
that's
wonderful.
amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you gave them the ownership that they needed to just,
Exactly.
and that made your job so much easier by doing that.
Exactly. And I allowed them to bring ideas as well,
Yeah.
which inspired them. Yeah.
So you've made this film looking back at your childhood, reflecting it through an adult lens. What's next for you? What are you working on now? Are you doing a lockdown movie? Are you what are you thinking about while you're there in LA and wishing you could be at home?
Well, it's very funny. Well, there's a few stories. I just find myself gravitating towards narratives with kids, and
Okay.
now there's one narrative that is not with kids, actually, that I've put forward, and it's a contemporary narrative about a marriage in Lebanon
Okay.
that is quite adult in its approach to things, but it will still have the weight, the thematic weight of things. And yeah, I mean,
I think it's great that you can make films in Lebanon about the place you know and come from, but also great that you receive support from the United States, other places, other countries, because you need it to make a film in the Middle East right now. Just support of Sundance, support of wonderful Alex Madigan, who's an old friend of mine. She's great.
Yeah.
You've got some really great collaborators. So
Yeah.
you know, we wish you from here the best on this new film, working with adults. I really can't wait to see you do another film with kids, because the way you found to work with them, you were just talking about, deliver such beautiful, beautiful results as we've seen in 1982.
Yeah.
So more films is generally the message from New Zealand. Adult, kids, you know, bring us more of your stories.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. The next film, actually, I'm going to be participating in the Berlin Air residency in the medium board.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I've known a number of films that have been through that residency, so you're edging your way closer to home once you're allowed to travel again.
To be quite honest, I can't wait.
Yeah.
So now, like, we're in the US and we can't travel to Europe. Why? Yeah.
That's another story. We'll talk about that one next time.
Yeah.
Look, best of luck with the new projects. Thank you for bringing us this film to us here, and you know, we'll keep you posted about how well it's received. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Oualid. Bye.
Bye.